Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Monday Musings, Danny SportsWrap. Yes, indeed, that's a different title than you've heard on Mondays for a while, because Danny and Stan's football weekend was in this slot from late August all the way through last week, but the Super Bowl is over, and now it's time to, start to turn the page, as you'll hear in my comments coming up in the first segment. You really can't turn the page that much, but because you still want to have yourself involved and invigorated, and reminiscing is a too odd a word because it's not that far removed, but still thinking about and digging into the details of the wonderful game and the experience of seeing the Chiefs come back once again and win the championship. So it is time to move ahead, but not before we look just a little bit back to the parade, to the championship, to the really wild celebration. We're not going to get much into the mechanics of football today. That's been done many times in this space and in many others as well. But just what a wonderful week it was for Kansas City. Let's talk about that a little bit. And then let's work our way to other things. The XFL, college basketball. Lots of different things to think about in the next few months in the world of sports, but it will all be under the umbrella or the thought umbrella of people in Kansas City smiling as they drive down the road, or just getting a great feeling next Thursday, a month from now, 2 months from now, and then eventually 6 months from now, and then it'll be about time to play football again. I was about to say 10 years, but 10 years from now, the Chiefs could well have 3 championships or 4. Who's to say? But you should relish this one and cherish this special week in Kansas City, which leaves us with a little bit of an exhale and a letdown. I'll talk about that next, and talk about the Chiefs and this great week and parades and things of that nature right here on Monday Musings, Danny SportsWrap for this week. We're here with Joe Spiker, the president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you worked for other companies in the construction industry. What inspired you to start your own company in Easton Roofing?
Well, Danny, when you are working for somebody else, you oftentimes don't get to see the project through from beginning to end, and you don't get the final control over the customer experience. And I wanted to build a place where people can come and get work done on their house and not have to worry about being treated the wrong way, and get a good customer service experience start to finish.
The company slogan is "Where Integrity Matters." Why is that so particularly important to you?
Well, for us, what that means is treating each other with respect at work, treating our clients with respect, and making the right choice, especially when no one's looking. So when you're presented all the time as a contractor with choices that have to be made, are you going to make more money on this if you cut a corner? And we just wanted to make a place and a slogan that said to our people and to whoever is our customer, we're not going to do that. We're going to make the right choice regardless of profit.
Easton Roofing, where integrity matters.
Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Visions' goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome to Monday Musings, Danny SportsWrap for this week, as we'll start off this change of our Monday podcast. For a few months, you're just stuck with me. I'll just come on and talk about what went on, mostly over the weekend, but maybe over the past week as well. And certainly the first edition of this for a while. Of course, we did Weekend Sports Wrap last year. I decided to change the title up a little bit because I don't know if I'll just talk about what happened on the weekend. Danny and Stan's football weekend has been a great thing, and it'll return next fall, and we'll get into college football when that kicks around. But for the next few months, it'll be basketball and baseball and Sporting Kansas City and tennis and golf and all the things that go on in the world of sports, and who knows, maybe some other musings as well. But this weekend's kind of an odd one and kind of a little low-key let-down time to start off a new podcast, which you'll hear each and every Monday, because it was such a fabulous week in Kansas City. It's such a celebratory week. Everybody having a great time. Even though it was cold, the parade was just magnificent. We have what has to be termed a letdown. You know, what did it feel like on the Sunday after the Super Bowl? Okay, the XFL was going to start up. Was anybody really excited about that? It was probably a bad time in Kansas City for an entity like the XFL to get started, because Kansas City is usually a community that really supports, ratings-wise, sports of all kinds at a higher level than other more major metropolitan cities. A lot of people say that's because there's less to do, but also this is a great sports town. And generally, even if the Chiefs aren't in it, which, of course, they usually weren't, the Super Bowl ratings are great. The NCAA tournament ratings are great. All those kind of things are usually have Kansas City way up high among the nation's communities. And I don't think that there was probably as much curiosity about the XFL as there might have been if the Chiefs and their fans weren't coming off this unbelievable high. If your team is the champion of the top football league in all the world, and certainly the top sports entity in the United States, I hear many people say it's the biggest thing in the world. Well, really, worldwide, the World Cup is the biggest thing in soccer, but certainly in this country, the domination of the National Football League means that your community, your team, is center stage, top-notch, top of the heap, can't be topped. And then are you going to turn around and watch Seattle or whoever the heck plays it? I don't even know all the teams in the XFL. The uniforms look cool. I didn't watch, I watched maybe 10 minutes of the action. But to watch a fantastic Super Bowl game, to have your team crowned the champions, to have a parade, and then turn around and watch that football, I can't imagine that it was something that piqued the curiosity of Kansas Cityans as much as maybe it would have if the Chiefs had been eliminated from the playoffs 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. Thank goodness that's not the case. But for the XFL and their experimentation in Kansas City, probably not something that was really looked at in intricate detail. But let's get to the week that was. The week for the Kansas City Chiefs. The week for the Kansas City Chiefs fans. The week for the community. It was just an unbelievable high on Sunday, and it fit the template of what had gone on in the playoffs all along for the Chiefs. We've heard multiple podcasts with me talking about the football game and all that, so we don't have to do that. But then the high of high on Sunday, and then on Monday, and all the schools are out, and people aren't going to work, and then they're getting all ready for the parade. And unfortunately, the weather didn't cooperate. For the people who went, I don't think it really hurt the atmosphere much at all. I don't know. I didn't hear many people complaining about the fact that it was cold. But I'm sure there were a lot of people who would have gone out to that parade if the weather was good. They're into it somewhat, but freezing cold temperatures, having to wait for hours, maybe young children, you wouldn't want to have them out in the cold for that period of time. I always thought that if the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, that the parade would eclipse even the unbelievable parade and gathering at Union Station that the Kansas City Royals had. I really did. I don't think it could dwarf it because that was so big, and this community is only so big. But I did think that it might be a bigger, badder, bolder event. But I think a couple of things at play, and then I started to think about it a little more. Certainly the weather didn't help. I bet there would have been 50% more people if it was a nice day, say 45 degrees, the sunshine was out, something like that. But the people who went had a great time. I'll get to that in a minute. But certainly the weather didn't cooperate. I mean, it was cold, it was raw, it was, I wouldn't have, I had other obligations, but I wouldn't even have thought of going to the parade. I didn't go to the parade for the Royals back in that November day 4+ years ago because I had gone to visit my parents after the World Series in Massachusetts. My wife went, which just showed how the community was swept up in everything Kansas City Royals. But that's the other part of it. It's not that this community was not swept up by the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and everything else. But that championship for the Royals was a long time coming for anything in the four major sports. Sporting Kansas City had won a championship in 2013. They really were just getting into their period of rising to be sort of a mainstay of Kansas City, the Kansas City sporting scene. But still, soccer is a niche sport still, a popular niche sport in this community, and a growing sport nationwide. And the footprint of Sporting Kansas City certainly is a great one in this community, but you just can't compare it at this point in time to baseball and football. So that championship in one of the four major sports was something that this community hadn't had in 30 years. Of any kind, and there have been so much disappointment. The other part is that I think when you play baseball on an almost daily level, almost day after day after day after day, although the postseason certainly has more breaks than the regular season does, I think you actually pick up the excitement maybe even a little bit more than Sundays of football for people who maybe aren't as into it. Certainly the build-up on a regular basis to a National Football League game is part of the allure of what goes on and the following and the perception and the joy of following football, the anticipation, the build-up, the analysis, so on and so forth. But it's a little different than every night or every other night or 3 nights out of 5 where you have an intense playoff game where everybody has to get into it. So I think that helps too, but I think mostly it was the fact that it was the first chance to have a big-time sports parade in a long, long time. So that went down in 2015, and now just over 4 years later, there's another one. So it can't feel quite the same. It can't quite feel as special, not to the people who are so invested in the Kansas City Chiefs, to the extra percent that you need to get whatever hundreds of thousands of people were out there. Initial reports were like 800,000, and more scientific reports maybe have estimated it at 255,000. It doesn't matter. It was an unbelievable gathering of people from this community, which has only a metro population of about 1 million. To the fans, to the people who had either waited 50 years or less, depending on how young they were at the time the Chiefs won it, they're into it. There's nothing like it. The National Football League rules. They were probably, I saw a little informal poll by in an article that said that they, talked to 10 people and 7 of them thought the parade was better, people who had gone to both. But you're not going to get that person who just really got swept up in it, the example of my wife, for instance. My wife wasn't around this year for the parade. I don't think she would have gone. But she did go to the parade back in 2015, and she's not much of a sports fan at all. But she was a community fan. She was swept up in it. I think between the weather and the fact that it was the second parade in a 4-year span, that affected the crowd. Did it take away from the event for those that went, the hardy souls who went out there and were able to toss beers to Patrick Mahomes and listen to the speech? No way. I mean, everybody who went and made the effort to go had a fantastic time. I heard it down to a man, to a man, to a woman, to a child. They had great experiences as well. But I do think those were a couple of the factors in reducing what might have been an unbelievable celebration if you had a combination of the Chiefs had just won the first championship in Kansas City in a long, long time in any sport, and if you had really cooperative weather, as we did in November of 2015, when an unbelievable day for November cropped up for the parade and celebration at Union Station. But still, what a week for Kansas City. And then Thursday comes, and there's still a lot of excitement. You're talking about the parade and everything, and then the work weekends, and then the weekend comes, and, the weekend for many people is about sports. But were we really ready to turn our attention to college basketball? Were we really ready to start to get revved up and excited about something else? No, we're still basking in the glow of all the craziness, of all the fun, of reviewing the Chiefs game, of looking at the mic'd up shows, looking up at the breakdown shows that talked about the big 3rd and 15 play, all the things that people can access these days to make their enjoyment of what was a fantastic event for the Kansas City Chiefs in this community so great. And now there's just a little exhale. And there was college basketball this weekend, and I am going to speak about college basketball in our next segment, but it's almost too quick a turnaround now. So we'll start to get more of the focus in it. 2 of the 3 area teams aren't playing very good basketball. That's part of it too. But just in general, it's just a little bit of an exhale, a letdown. And the glow of the Kansas City Chiefs will still remain a great one over the next few months. People will be just driving down the street in their car, and a commercial will pop on, or a highlight will pop up, or a business owner will come on during a commercial and say congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs, and people will just smile a little bit and feel warm and think about who they shared the game with and who they went to the parade with and all those kind of things. So that won't go away. But as far as trying to turn the page in the world of sports, it's difficult. And people will be thinking about the Kansas City Chiefs and what the future will hold. I remember in the last podcast with Stan Weber last Monday, Danny and Stan's football weekend, that this replaces for the next few months. I said I wanted Kansas City to kind of put a 30-day moratorium on looking to the future, what next year's team will be, what the next 5 years will bring. Well, nobody can really bring themselves to do that, but I just want everybody to just soak everything in and enjoy it and just treasure the fact that this championship is in hand. You know, if this is the only one, down the line it'll be disappointing, but you don't have to worry about that right now. You just have to worry about the fact that you can enjoy this championship. You know, the best Super Bowl teams in history have only won 6 of them, and the Chiefs now have 2. It's in a different category for the many teams that have just 1 Super Bowl or none. So an unbelievable week in Kansas City, but now a time to kind of kick back and turn our focus towards eventually Sporting Kansas City, which starts their season in just 3 weeks, and the Kansas City Royals, who are about to head to spring training, and college basketball, which really is going to be headed down the home stretch as far as conference play is concerned. And here Kansas fans will be getting all excited about another NCAA tournament and another conference battle, and a good one with the Baylor Bears. That's where we turn our attention to next, as college basketball is the next big thing, if there can be a next big thing after all that the Kansas City Chiefs accomplished. Continue to enjoy it and think of the memories and the selfies and everything else that made it such an incredible time, and the fact that Patrick Mahomes is just the perfect person to represent Kansas City and be the icon of your franchise, and everybody feels great for Andy Reid. All that good feeling is going to roll on, but now we must move on. Sports never stops, and so it's college basketball. Coming up next on Monday Musings, it's Danny SportsWrap for this week.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
Are you thinking of starting a new business? Does your current business feel stuck? Or are you just trying to grow what you already have? Running a business is a lot of work, and it takes the right team to make it all happen. If you're looking to grow your business, call my friends Ben and Greg over at Fuego Consulting. They put together a company that can help you reach your business goals. Whether you're looking to get online, build a social media strategy, or rebrand your business, they can help. Call Fuego at 816-663-9695 or visit them online at fuegoconsulting.com. Fuego Consulting. Let's grow your business together.
Hey guys, it's Brian Haney, voice of the Jayhawks, and Matt Llewellyn from the 23rd Street Brewery. Matt, I've got a bunch of buddies coming over to watch the big game, and I need some ideas on what to cook.
Hey, let me handle it, Brian.
You're going to come over and cook for us?
For you? Maybe. But you should just let 23rd Street Brewery cater it. We could bring a big pan of Bill Self mac and cheese, wings, veggies, naked nachos, and anything else you might want.
Great. Well, you want to stick around and watch the game?
No, I've got to get back to the brewery and watch it on the big screen.
The place to get great catering and watch all the games, the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence.
For many people, a family law case will be one of the most difficult experiences in their life. The law firm of Kenneth McRae will help you through it. Personal and effective help from Ken in concert with you will develop a unique strategy for your unique case. As Ken always says, divorce can be civil law, not civil war. Licensed in Kansas? Visit McRaeLawOffice.com or call 913-972-4765.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyKlinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Back on Monday Musings, Danny's Sports Watch for this week as we turn the corner from the Super Bowl. And as I said, we really don't want to turn the corner that fast. And the corner we're turning to is college basketball in this segment. And gritty, not pretty certainly was the watchword on Saturday as the 3 locals played. consecutively, basically. Kansas at 11, then Missouri at 2:30, and K-State at 7. And if you wanted to watch them all, you could. And if you did, which I did, then you are really a basketball fan, or it's really part of your job, because this was not pretty basketball. But in the end, 2 of the 3 teams won, and the third, Kansas State, at least showed some mettle in absolutely laying an egg at the start of their game, but bouncing back to at least make a game of it at one point or another before fading away again down the stretch. And on the whole, this is a season in which 2 of the teams, Missouri and Kansas State, really don't have much to play for right now and have had seasons that are forgettable and basketball games that pop up that maybe their fans don't even care to watch. Kansas fans, it's never going to be the case for them. Well, I can't say never. Who knows? 20 years from now, maybe they'll be playing a game that nobody cares about. I don't know. But right now, they certainly do. But this is a Kansas team that's a little bit different, to say the least. We are in the first season of the three-point line moving back, and it has affected teams across the country, and it has affected Kansas, but Kansas likely, no matter where the arc line was not going to be a great three-point shooting team. So in an era where especially more and more the teams that have succeeded at the highest level have shot the three a lot and shot the three effectively, Kansas is trying to take a different tack this year, and it'll be interesting to see whether this is a year, because everybody is adjusting to the new three-point line, and it doesn't seem like there's outstanding offensive teams out there, that maybe the struggles that Kansas has, and they are struggles, and they're winning all their games in the conference basically, except for the one against Baylor, but they have now played 10 conference games, and they have scored in the 60s 7 times. Now, they have won 6 of those games, but this is something completely different for Kansas, completely different. I was looking back through all the years of Kansas under Bill Self, and routinely you saw many games in the 80s, most games in the 70s, and seldom are the teams in the 60s. And this year it's commonplace for Kansas. So they are leaning on their defense, and they are leaning on a couple of players on offense very heavily, Devon Dotson and Udoka Azubuike. For instance, in Saturday's game, Kansas wins 60-46, and it's been the type of game that's becoming more commonplace even more of late. Kansas did not shoot the ball particularly effectively. They leaned almost exclusively on Devon Dotson and Udoka Azubuike, and certainly those two came through with good games. They combined for 38 points on 17 of 31 shooting, and the rest of the team scored 22 points on 7 of 27 shots. And Kansas, once again, didn't shoot the three well, and they didn't shoot it often. 4 out of 13, just about at their average, a little bit below it. They are shooting 34% as a team, but it has gotten down in league play as well. Of course, that's en fuego compared to the teams we'll talk about here in a little bit. But just look for a little historical perspective here. Of course, you never want to hold a team to the standard of the very best team that Bill Self has had, his championship team. But still, just to give some contextual aspects to this, the 2007-2008 title team scored 60 in a win only once all conference season. Kansas already has 6 of those. They scored in the 80s 9 times in 16 league games. And the 11-12 team, the other team that went to the national title game, losing at that time, they were considered a defensive-minded team that was challenged a bit offensively. They scored in the 60s in only 4 wins. Kansas has already easily eclipsed that. So you see that Kansas is playing things in a completely different way, and it does seem like that if you want to make the case, and people I know and talk to and spend time with on the radio, on podcasts, Soren Petro, one of them, are asking that question, and rightfully so. In a basketball historical context where the last couple of champions, Villanova and Virginia, have shot the ball from three-point range a lot and effectively, can you do it this way? Can you have the standard issue, old-time big man? And Kansas is trying it that way, and then their lead dog, Devon Dotson, who is easily leading them in scoring, is a very poor three-point shooter, below 30%, and probably should be taking less of them, and because 28% is just not very good. But the issue may be a moot one. Who's to say? Kansas is 9-1 in conference play. Their only loss is to the top-rated team in the country. They will play them again one more time. If they avenge that defeat, they theoretically could still win the title. And that would be doing it in a completely different way, as I've said a few times. But I think that one person probably appreciates this more than many others, and that's probably Bill Self. He likes grit. He likes toughness. I don't think he likes the fact that he didn't have any other offensive options the other day. He said so, but Kansas is grinding out victories and doing it. Last 2 games they've scored in the 60s, and as I said, 7 times in 10 league games they've scored in the 60s, only cracking 80 once, just 1 point over that in a win over Kansas State. But their offensive problems probably seem just like a little bit of a joke. To our other 2 locals, Missouri and Kansas State, and as I mentioned, these 2 team seasons are going in a decidedly wrong direction, but Missouri, at least on Saturday, got themselves a win to brighten things up a little, and it came before the biggest crowd of the year at Mizzou Arena. It was a quote-unquote rivalry game against Arkansas, and they won it in overtime as Missouri takes it 83-79. And as you might expect, they shot the ball a little bit better in this game, but there were stretches where it looked like Missouri, which led significantly early in the game, were going to go away, and Arkansas was going to catch and pass them. Missouri missing 7 straight shots, and I think they were 1 for 12 from three-point range at one point in time, but they attacked the basket. This game was hard to watch. There were 83 free throws in the game, and Eric Musselman looked like he was chewing on a lemon the entire game. So you kind of get the idea that when the opposing coach thinks his team is really playing poorly and that they have an opponent that they are taking on that they should be beating and beating handily perhaps, you get an idea of where Missouri is at. And we're now well into the Cuonzo Martin tenure, and Cuonzo Martin has a contract that's going to be extremely hard to get out of if Missouri had any inclination to do so. But it's not only a case where Missouri isn't winning a lot of basketball games and that this season is going down the drain. It's whether fans of the Missouri Tigers think that there is the chance that Missouri will play entertaining basketball. Now, if you win, it's always more entertaining than if you lose. And losing when you're not playing entertaining basketball, when you don't score a lot, when you can't shoot the ball, that's the worst combination. So wins could clean up a lot of things, but I think there might be a feeling right now that, wow, this toughness, this grit that's preached by Cuonzo Martin all the time, is this sellable? Missouri doesn't draw very well for college basketball right now. They did have a nice crowd on Saturday, and it was nice that they got a win in that game. Xavier Pinson was excellent in the game with 24 points. They need more games like that. Missouri barely has any players who are averaging in double figures. Drew Smith is averaging 11.3. Mark Smith, who was unavailable the other day along with Jeremiah Tillman, is just over 10 points a game, and then nobody else averages in double figures. So a win for Missouri on Saturday, that's a nice thing. But even these teams getting back or to the 500 mark are being considered for NIT. Kansas State's in real trouble in that regard. We'll get to them now. But the Tigers now 3-7 in SEC play, but a bright spot on Saturday. Almost impossible to find a bright spot for Bruce Weber and his Kansas State Wildcats. He is playing some young players that look like they have some promise, but they're going to lose good players too. And the only good thing that's a little bit different than Missouri in this regard is that Kansas State has had recent success. And Bruce Weber has had a season like this at Kansas State, and he has rebounded from it. So I think there's a little more faith that Kansas State can bounce back. But there's been a lot swirling around Kansas State. They can't score. They're also a team that doesn't play particularly entertaining basketball. Their most entertaining player, and he can be very entertaining at times, Cartier Jara, has gone through a lot. The Fran Fraschilla criticism, as it's been called and was called in the Kansas City Star on Sunday, I think is a little unfair to Fran Fraschilla. When Fran Fraschilla goes on a television broadcast of a Kansas State game and says that he thinks that Cartier Jara has his mind elsewhere on the NBA rather than on Kansas State basketball, he's just not dreaming that up. He's probably gotten some information from people within the program, perhaps Bruce Weber himself, that he thinks that may be the case. And in fact, Bruce Weber made comments that indicated that he thought that some of the players on the team were thinking about things other than just Kansas State basketball. Kansas State yet again, in this recurring theme for our local teams, is a poor three-point shooting team, 32.5. They just came out the other day after a lot was said by Bruce Weber about fighting and playing for the jersey and things like that, and just absolutely stunk it up early. They were down by 22-5 at the outset of the game, and even worse than that, 21-2, I think it was early on. They would fight back all the way to within 4, but usually when you do that, you'll fade away, and they did quickly in the game, and Iowa State wins the game by 10 points. K-State now 2-8 in the league, 9-14 on the season, and even the total consolation prize that is the NIT seems a bit, well, it seems real far-fetched right now. K-State's 9-14. That means they have to play 5 games over 500 the rest of the way to even be a 500 basketball team, and that's what you have to do to even qualify for the NIT. So it's almost certain to be a non-tournament year for Kansas State. Some of the people that they expected to step forward, like Jara, who had a nice game the other day, and Xavier Sneed, have just not made the big step forward that they were expected to, and McCall Mayween's kind of in that same boat. DeJuan Gordon has shown some prospect for the future, but there's been a lot of disappointment for Bruce Weber, and he's been openly frustrated with his team. And the thing that's frustrating for Kansas State is the fact that they come off what was a very encouraging, impressive football season. K-State still is a football school. Among their older fans, they remember when they were a basketball school. But you have a new coach, a football coach. You have a basketball coach who has sort of ebbed and flowed as far as his popularity within the fan base. That was washed away with a conference title and some NCAA tournament success. But now they go back into a tough spot in this season. And it's kind of easy to look ahead and see perhaps another season on the horizon next year that won't be particularly good. But Bruce Weber has circled the wagons again. They have a couple of winnable games coming up. Oklahoma State on Tuesday night at home, TCU game to follow. If this season is going to have any brightness or any promise or any rays of sunshine amidst the dark clouds, they better win those 2 games. But the other day, the way you come out is just very disappointing in a game, and this college basketball season has some intrigue with Kansas, to say the least, but in a different way, and a very hard-to-watch feel for the other 2 programs. And I made a point of watching the entire game of all 3 teams, and you might say, well, my wife's in Europe, that helps, so I've got extra time on my hands, but you might say that I was torturing myself by doing that, but I like basketball. Even mediocre to bad basketball is interesting, and that's kind of what we got on Saturday. But as usual, it was Kansas that was the highlight, continuing to play very good defense, and as I said, grinding out wins and doing things completely differently, uniquely, as 60-point games in the 60s in 7 of their 10 wins. We'll see if they perk up on offense or if they need to, as they've won all but 1 game. Nice to have you on Monday Musings, Danny SportsWrap. We'll be doing this for the next few months with just me, so if you enjoy just listening to me talk about sports, that's what you'll get on Monday. You get a whole lot of other things on DannyKlinkScale.com and the Reasonably Irreverent podcast. A lot of sports, a little bit of music, a little bit of film, all kinds of things that you can enjoy. And, of course, every Friday we profile interesting topics and individuals here at DannyKlinkScale.com. So glad to have you aboard. And the great feelings of the past week or so in Kansas City will warm us during the cold winter months, and we do have to adjust to different things to pay attention to. But I think so many people will have their eyes really already on maybe St. Joseph, Missouri. That's not secured yet, but certainly training camp for the world champion Kansas City Chiefs as we wrap things up on Danny Sports Wrap for this week on the Danny Klink Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Thanks for joining me.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Klink Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klink Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.